Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm genuinely grateful you've chosen to spend some time with this video, and if you feel like subscribing to the channel, that would truly mean a lot to me. With that said, let's get started. My name is Sean. Marriage is meant to be a journey of growth, two people moving forward together. But somewhere between the late-night emails, the business flights, and the endless chase for success, Amanda and I ended up like strangers who happened to share an address. When she brought up the idea of opening our marriage on the night of our 5th anniversary, I didn't feel blindsided. I felt clarity. She wasn't breaking up with me in so many words, but she was asking me to help her make the end official. We got married 7 years earlier, right after finishing grad school. We were full of drive and optimism, ready to build a future together. Amanda had just earned her MBA and landed a position as a marketing analyst with a top-tier consulting firm downtown. I had finished my master's in civil engineering and started a job with the city's transportation division, contributing to the infrastructure shaping the region. At the beginning, our relationship was grounded in shared goals and mutual support. We both knew our chosen paths would require sacrifices, late nights, missed weekends, but we believed the hard work would one day create a stable, meaningful life. Our plan was clear: work hard now, so we could enjoy the rewards later. Amanda thrived in her role, and I found great purpose in mine. In those early years, we built a rhythm that worked. Even with full calendars, we made time to connect. Dinners at home became our way of debriefing the day, and weekend getaways helped us recharge. Quiet moments were just as valuable as the bigger ones. She brought warmth into our home, even when things were chaotic. When I was drained, she'd surprise me with home-cooked meals or thoughtful little gifts. She showed genuine interest in my projects, no matter how dry or technical they sounded. I did my best to reciprocate, celebrating her wins, showing up for events, and taking on more at home when her work got intense. We saw ourselves as a team, supporting each other individually while investing in our life together. But eventually, that balance began to unravel. Amanda's career took off. New titles came with bigger clients, more pressure, and frequent travel. She was often out of town, embedded with client teams across the country. Meanwhile, I was promoted into a leadership role, managing larger initiatives and directing engineering teams. My workload swelled with long hours, site visits, and management responsibilities. Success brought distance. The more we accomplished professionally, the less we saw of each other. Dinner together became a rare occurrence. Weekends disappeared into work obligations. Our conversations turned transactional: calendars, bills, to-do lists, while emotional connection faded. Amanda stopped doing the small things that once made me feel seen. She no longer waited up for me, citing the need for rest. The spontaneous dinners vanished. Evenings became quiet routines filled with takeout and scheduling. Most noticeably, our intimacy faded, both emotionally and physically. Whenever I reached out, she seemed distracted or too tired. Attempts at romance were met with kind but firm rejections. I tried not to take it personally. We were both burning the candle at both ends. I told myself things would ease up eventually, that we'd regain control over our time and rebuild what had slipped away. But as our 5th anniversary approached, it hit me. This wasn't just a rough patch. The distance between us had become the norm. Even when Amanda wasn't working, she didn't seem to want to spend time with me. Her downtime was increasingly spent alone or with friends. Our physical connection had dwindled to the point of absence. Months without closeness. And every time I tried to discuss it, she offered reasons: stress, hormones, exhaustion, but never solutions. There was no real effort to bridge the gap. That anniversary dinner marked a turning point. I had made reservations at a restaurant that held meaning for us, hoping the familiar setting might stir something deeper. Over a glass of wine and shared appetizers, I opened up. I said maybe it was time to shift our priorities, to stop chasing constant career milestones and start thinking about the life we wanted to build. I brought up the idea of starting a family, hoping that a shared vision for the future might bring us closer, give us something more lasting to hold on to. Amanda hesitated for a long moment before speaking, her expression shifting into something solemn, an unmistakable signal that the conversation was veering into unexpected and possibly unwelcome territory. Rather than the openness, or at least curiosity, I had hoped for, there was a visible discomfort in her gaze, an uneasy look that suggested I had stumbled into a topic she'd been avoiding. What came next rendered me speechless and permanently changed how I viewed the very core of our marriage. She admitted that she wasn't sure she felt the kind of love I had always assumed was mutual between us, that her feelings didn't carry the weight or depth necessary for a long-term, emotionally committed, family-centered relationship. But that admission was only the beginning. After delivering that emotional blow, she asked whether we might explore a non-monogamous arrangement, remaining married in the legal and practical sense, but giving each other permission to pursue intimate and romantic relationships beyond our union. I sat frozen, blindsided by the magnitude of what she had just said, unable to articulate the shock and heartbreak welling up inside me. This was the woman with whom I had shared 5 years of life, the person I believed envisioned a future intertwined with mine, now suggesting that our relationship was little more than a functional alliance rather than a true emotional connection. I said nothing. I couldn't. Instead, I mechanically returned to my meal, my thoughts spinning, trying to absorb the reality that had just been laid bare. The drive home from the restaurant was marked by silence, each of us trapped within our own private reflections, reviewing what had just unfolded and silently grappling with its implications. The familiar ease between us had evaporated, replaced by a heavy, awkward quiet that made even casual conversation feel strained and unnatural. From that night forward, the atmosphere in our home changed. No longer a place of warmth and shared comfort, but emotionally vacant in a way that had nothing to do with physical space. What had once been a slow and subtle emotional drift between us had now become a glaring, undeniable rift, infecting every aspect of our lives together. Amanda appeared to interpret my silence as contemplation, as though I were seriously weighing her proposal rather than recognizing it for what it truly was. The stunned response of someone whose world had just tilted off its axis. She began to mention the idea more frequently, sometimes musing aloud about how freeing it might be to form new romantic connections while still preserving the practical benefits of our shared life. But I wasn't considering her suggestion in any real sense. I was coming to grips with something far more painful, that the relationship I had invested so deeply in was, to her, a structure rooted in convenience rather than passion or authentic love. It began to dawn on me that perhaps she had been quietly waiting all this time for something, or someone, more thrilling to present itself. After several days of soul-searching and reflection on everything she had said, I made a decision that I suspected would catch her off guard, but which felt unavoidable. I contacted a divorce attorney to initiate the formal process of ending our marriage. I chose a lawyer known for handling high-asset, complex cases with professionalism and discretion. During our initial consultation, I laid out the full context and explained my desire for a respectful and orderly separation. With no children and largely independent careers and finances, I hoped we could handle the process without unnecessary conflict. The attorney explained the legal procedure in our jurisdiction and gave me a general idea of how the timeline would unfold. Because Amanda and I were both employed and had kept most of our finances separate, dividing our assets was expected to be relatively uncomplicated, certainly more so than cases involving unequal income or dependent spouses. Over the following weeks, I collaborated closely with the attorney to collect documentation and determine the value of our shared assets and liabilities. We jointly owned a house, each had individual retirement savings, held some shared investments, and possessed the usual accumulation of marital belongings. The home, purchased 3 years prior, was the most significant asset and potential sticking point. Both of our names appeared on the mortgage and the title. We would need to agree on whether one of us would retain ownership and buy the other out, or if we would sell and divide the proceeds evenly. When Amanda was served the divorce papers at her office by a professional process server, her reaction was swift and furious. That evening, she called me, clearly enraged that I had taken legal action without giving her the chance to further explain what she had meant during our anniversary dinner. What she shared in that emotionally charged conversation reframed everything and made her earlier words feel even more calculated than I had originally understood. She confessed that her proposal hadn't been driven by a broad desire for openness or exploration. It was tied to a specific person. Her college crush, someone I vaguely remembered her mentioning in the past, had recently gone through a divorce and had invited her on a weekend trip. Her so-called suggestion was, in reality, a veiled request for permission to act on a romantic interest she had apparently carried for years. That admission changed the context entirely. This wasn't about redefining the terms of our marriage together. It was about her seeking a guilt-free path to pursue someone else. There was no mutual discovery being proposed, only a one-sided plea to legitimize infidelity. She tried to justify it by suggesting our marriage had already become emotionally distant and physically uninvolved, arguing that we were effectively living like an open couple in everything but name. In her view, formally acknowledging that reality would simply be more honest than pretending we still shared a conventional relationship. But her attempt to reframe the situation only solidified my decision. That she could describe our marriage as essentially over while still expecting me to remain legally bound to her revealed a level of self-interest I could no longer excuse. She downplayed her feelings for the other man, claiming it was nothing more than a physical spark and insisting she had no intention of leaving me or pursuing anything meaningful with him. All she wanted, she claimed, was the ability to explore that connection without deceit or shame. But I no longer cared about her explanations. I was done listening. The woman who once stood before me and promised loyalty, respect, and unwavering support had just revealed something devastating. For the entirety of our marriage, she'd been harboring fantasies about another man. She admitted she'd only been waiting for the right moment to turn those fantasies into reality. In that moment, I told Amanda that I was proceeding with the divorce. Her confession about a long-held attraction confirmed what I had already come to accept. Ending our relationship was the only path that made sense. I explained that I was no longer willing to remain in a marriage with someone who saw me as a placeholder while waiting for something, or someone, better. I wanted a partnership built on shared commitment and genuine connection. In the months that followed, the divorce unfolded exactly as my attorney had anticipated, smoothly, efficiently, and with minimal drama. Amanda's stable income from her consulting career meant we didn't have to worry about alimony or unequal financial burdens dragging things out. We were able to sort out the practical matters without significant conflict. Amanda opted to keep the house and agreed to compensate me for my share of the equity, which was a relief. I had no desire to linger in a space filled with echoes of a relationship that had long since deteriorated. I was ready for a clean break and a fresh beginning. Our financial assets, including investments and retirement accounts, were divided according to standard legal norms. Anything registered individually remained with its owner, and jointly held accounts were split evenly. As for our personal belongings, we divided them through a mix of negotiation and common sense. Items that held sentimental value or had belonged to us individually before the marriage returned to their original owners. Even during the legal proceedings, Amanda wavered in her resolve. She continued to say she wasn't entirely sure she wanted the marriage to end and proposed that perhaps we could redefine our relationship rather than dissolve it. She genuinely seemed surprised that I wasn't open to the idea of an open marriage, suggesting I was outdated for expecting exclusivity, while presenting her alternative as enlightened and progressive. Even after the papers were signed, she tried to maintain a connection, hoping we could preserve the benefits of our partnership without the responsibilities I considered essential. Her suggestions made one thing painfully clear. She still didn't understand why I was walking away. Amanda seemed to think I was rejecting a specific arrangement. not realizing that the very suggestion underscored a much deeper problem, a lack of emotional intimacy and true commitment. I tried to explain that I wasn't interested in a superficial arrangement that merely mimicked a marriage. What I wanted was a real, emotionally bonded union, grounded in loyalty and a shared purpose. But she either couldn't or wouldn't grasp that treating our relationship like a convenient setup was precisely what had led to its demise. When the divorce was finally finalized, I was filled with a bittersweet mix of grief and relief. Grief for what we once might have built together and for the effort and love I had invested, but also a profound sense of liberation from the illusion that we had something lasting, when in truth, I had been the only one fully committed. With hindsight, the signs were unmistakable. Amanda's emotional disengagement over the years hadn't been a passing phase or the result of external stress. It was a gradual but deliberate withdrawal. The affection, the closeness, the shared moments, they hadn't vanished by chance. They had faded because her heart had already left the relationship. That season of my life taught me invaluable truths. The stark contrast between someone who is truly invested in building a future with you and someone who merely finds comfort in the stability you provide. Amanda had appreciated the structure and social convenience of our marriage, but she had never been truly committed to me. Her pitch for an open relationship didn't stem from a desire to fix what was broken. It was, in fact, the clearest evidence yet that for years she had emotionally been somewhere else. The fact that her proposal centered around one specific man from her past only underscored the truth. She had been emotionally tethered to someone else while physically present with me. Going through the divorce also taught me the importance of setting clear boundaries and expectations in any partnership. Amanda appeared genuinely confused by my refusal to embrace her new vision for our marriage. She seemed to believe that her transparency should be met with appreciation, not hurt. But honesty without empathy, without loyalty, doesn't nurture a relationship. It breaks it. Being told by your spouse that they no longer feel the way you thought they did and want your blessing to pursue someone else isn't evidence of growth. It's confirmation that the foundation you thought was solid had already crumbled beneath your feet. In the end, I'm strangely grateful for the honesty Amanda offered on our 5th wedding anniversary. As painful as it was, that moment shattered the illusion I'd been clinging to. Living in denial would have been far more damaging in the long run. Realizing I was part of a one-sided marriage hurt deeply, but it was also a turning point I needed. The woman who asked to open our marriage so she could rekindle something with an old flame did me a favor I never expected. She revealed her true priorities before I sacrificed more time chasing a future we never genuinely shared. She framed her request as a way to heal our marriage, but in reality, it revealed something far more telling. She had never loved me with the same intensity or intention that I had loved her. All along, she'd been waiting quietly for an opportunity to pursue someone she found more exciting. The emotional coldness I felt in our home after that anniversary dinner wasn't a sudden development. It had been creeping in for years. I just hadn't been willing to see how distant she had already become. When Amanda assured me it would be just one night with the man she couldn't stop thinking about, what she was really asking was permission to end a marriage that had already ended in her heart. Filing for divorce wasn't some bold move on my part. It was simply the formal step she had been unwilling, or perhaps too comfortable, to take herself. And that's where our story ends. If you have thoughts to share, feel free to leave a comment. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If this story struck a chord, feel free to explore more content on this channel. Until we meet again, be well.